is Everyday Expertise, and I'm Angela. And I'm here with Derek Chung. He is the game designer and head of Nomnivore Games, makers of the tabletop RPG game Emberwind. Hello, Derek.
Hello.
So let's start with what is Emberwind?
Oh, wow. Starting off with the hard questions, right?
For someone who doesn't know what it is.
Yeah, so Emberwind is like based on what you've already said so far, it's a brand new tabletop RPG. But it's one that we're really excited to bring to the world because we think it's going to do a lot of things that veterans are familiar with, but handled in a much more nuanced and ambitious way. But it's also supposed to be a brand new entry that's supposed to help brand new players get into the tabletop genre in no time at all. There aren't that many game systems out there that seek to try and make the game both accessible, yet also offer something really crunchy for people who play the game, and Emberwind seeks to do both at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Is it, so genre-wise, is it like fantasy? Is it a science fiction type game? Is it steampunk?
I guess a little bit of all of the above.
Yeah.
So Emberwind is built kind of uniquely in a lot of ways, and one of those ways is how its setting is handled. First and foremost, the game engine that it runs on is lore agnostic, so you can put whatever world you want in, and we wanted to do that so that anyone could have whatever flexibility they wanted to create whatever world they wanted while playing on this engine. But specifically for Emberwind itself, one of the worlds that we've launched so far anyways, the world of Axia, is a mixture of science fiction and fantasy together to give you a science fantasy universe. But another really distinguishing factor about Emberwind and how stuff here runs is that when you play the game, we've baked in ways where every decision you make while playing will affect what the world will develop into. So you could technically bleed some steampunk elements into it, and a bunch of other really cool stuff that I can't spoil yet. Yeah.
That's cool. So how did the project come about? What inspired you to create it?
Do you want the gamer friendly answer, or the really unusual weird one that has to do with my unique background?
Whichever one you're comfortable with telling me.
Sure.
And are public.
Both answers are public. One's just a lot longer. I guess I'll start with the short version first. Emberwind kind of came about because I used to play a lot of tabletop games with my friends. And while I really enjoyed what they could do and bring to life for people, there were a lot of challenges for me to be able to share that with people who weren't already in that headspace. It was very targeted to particular audiences. So Emberwind kind of became a project where I had a bunch of friends who loved that type of stuff, and I wanted to make sure that they could tell the stories that they wanted to and couldn't in other more traditional tabletop systems. But at the same time, also open it up to all of our other friends who were on the side going, wow, this looks really cool. I don't want to read that many rules, but it looks really cool. I want them to be able to enjoy this too. The longer answer here is that I saw a lot of potential in a genre and medium that could do a lot of good for the world. My traditional training, I guess if you want to call it that, is in psychotherapy. And I've been doing psychotherapy for quite a while. I've been in a lot of academic circuits, a lot of psychological research and so forth, where kind of over the years, I've really had a lot of experience with the kind of the down on their luck, the really sad, the people who have just kind of struggled with a lot of things. And I'm really hesitant to say things like mental disorders and just bracket it that way because I don't 100% believe in all that. Now, there's a lot of stuff in contemporary psychology, the way that we framed and thought about things, that is extremely useful for people, but not everyone. At least that's my humble opinion. And that's most evident when you look at psychotherapy in itself. One of the things that I'm caught saying a lot is that I don't think that the opposite of mental illness is really therapy, at least not for everyone. What I think it is actually, or what I think is the opposite, I should say, is actually a community and connection. And what better way to bring people together than games, where you can actually sit down, enjoy something meaningful and constructive with other people. It's more complex than that, but that starts delving into a lot of like philosophy and stuff. But yeah, we can unpack that if you want to, but we can also kind of just gloss over that too.
No, I mean, it makes sense. Is that why you think that the tabletop RPG genre is the best fit for Emberwind rather than, say, a video game or a fiction series or something like that? Is that why you chose it?
Yes and no. Mm-hmm. I did choose Emberwind to be like a tabletop at the very beginning because there is a unique type of experience that you can have only while at a table with other people. Mm-hmm. I think that there's something really important between like a face-to-face interaction, and it's definitely not the same even like talking to you right now on Skype as opposed to what it would be like in the same room with you. And at the same time, like if it was just a book or something like that, it would miss out on the ability for people to really get the opportunity to create as much as they do, right? That's why I mentioned
fan fiction.
yeah, of course. Like, there's always ways to create, but like that's why I was talking about specific mediums. Yeah. Gaming gives more methods for people to create things that they want to than, let's say, books do, or I should say, more avenues of ways to get into that. But very specifically, tabletop gaming gives that in a much more unprecedented and unrestricted manner compared to video games. Mm-hmm. That said, Emberwind in its current stage is where we've started. It's not supposed to only be restricted to the tabletop genre. In the future, we are looking at, and we're really hoping, if this kicks off well, to bring it to other spaces. We were already talking about doing some mobile app support for the game a little more ambitiously. There are some PC game ideas over the horizon. In fact, there's been this idea that I've been playing around with for years now, but how to convert the same engine that this runs on into a cooperative MOBA-esque card game, which is kind of cool. But that's
I could see how that would translate.
Yeah, it's just really, really far down the road. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and it's not restricted to just kind of gaming too. Like the structure that Emberwind has done and can easily be converted into a novel. And I've had a couple people ask me about film rights for this already too.
That's cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's cool too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's always cool when you have people asking about film rights, and certainly a lot of the lore, it's really developed. What you have on the website. Yeah. So how did you go about assembling your team for this and putting the game together? Can you tell us a little about the process?
Well, the simple version of that is just me walking up to someone who I thought was cool. It's like, hey, you want to work on something cool? And they were like, yeah, sure. But that's probably not what you're asking.
Well, that's certainly part of the process,
I mean,
approaching people that you think are cool and asking them, and they say yes.
That, ironically, is kind of how this all started, or at least one half of it. Yeah. There's one individual on my team that I like name drop all the time, and his name is John Helfers, who is the lead editor for Catalyst. So he works on all the IPs like Shadowrun, BattleTech, and a bunch of other cool stuff. But he's also been huge in a lot of writing and editorials outside of the gaming industry as well. And I actually met him at Gen Con, I think about 2 years ago, where he was giving a seminar on how you get into the industry. He was, if I remember this right, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, he was giving a presentation on how freelancers get into the industry and using himself as an example by just saying, hey, you go to a seminar like this, introduce yourself, have your portfolio be like, hey, just hire me. And that was exactly what I did right there. I'm like, hey, I'm a new game company. Do you want to work for me? And I feel like he was he was held hostage by the scenario because he painted himself into a corner and had no option but to say yes. But so far, it's been a great working relationship. But outside of John, everyone else who's working on the team are people who come from different industries. They're people who are working in related industries to gaming, but not directly in it. And that actually comes from the fact that I was trying to create something new and bringing in different talent, new talent, was one of the ways to do that, which is why if you look at the artwork, there's a much stronger cinematic vibe to it, because a lot of the artists that I work with work specifically in film or in video games. And that's to help increase the accessibility by making the game closer to a storybook than it is just a hard, heavy source book for rules. Same thing with the writers that have been assembled. Eric, for example, is a playwright, and that's where his main training comes from.
Mm-hmm. So, what for you, I think, differentiates Emberwind from other tabletop games like D&D and stuff like this? What do you think would make someone who's like a hardcore gamer, plays D&D every weekend or more, pick up Emberwind?
Yeah. Well,
what's different for them that would convince them?
There's a lot of things, but I guess probably the one that opens eyes the most is when I tell them they can play this game without a GM. And more than being able to play this game without a GM, you can technically play Emberwind single player too, as lonely as that sounds, which does give you the opportunity to, like, if for example you played D&D for so many years and you're a veteran, usually you're like an adult or a little older than that, and you've got all those responsibilities that makes it really hard for you to find the time to play anymore. Emberwind is built in a way where it streamlines kind of a lot of the processes, where like D&D's been doing it over the years. 5th edition is the most streamlined version that they've put out, and it is a fast experience to get into, but it still assumes that you've got a lot of experience in tabletop games. Emberwind, with how we built it, has achieved that where it's even faster. People who play our demos, for example, will pick up and learn the entire game and how it runs in about 5 to 10 minutes. And then they're just off to the races, where they're running my demos for me at conventions, which is really, really nice. But it's like a much more intuitive, faster system that doesn't require as much setup. Yeah. And that's true not only on like the GM-ish and GM-free side, but also for players, where if you're trying to make your own character, it takes about maybe 5 minutes if you're good at it, and the first time you do it, maybe 30. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So is this your first sort of game design project? Is it your first time in game design?
Yes, it's the first time I've tried something to this scale or this caliber. I've always like worked on and played with games on the side a little bit. Like I've been an avid gamer since I can't even remember. That's how long ago it's been. But I've always been involved in gaming in pretty large scenes. Like I've been part of esports teams before. I've been on leaderboards for just about like every game I pick up. It's been a huge part of my childhood to kind of play through and figure out systems and stuff. And then back then I did kind of the not so great things where I exploited them all. But it gave me this definite interest in trying to build my own games too. And I think my first foray was where I was trying to design, and it was the worst decision ever. I was trying to design like edutainment games where I was trying to bleed together like really good lessons with gameplay, focusing on kind of crystallized knowledge, where it's like, oh, well, here's a video game that will teach you all the facts that you would otherwise need to read a textbook for. Because, even at like a younger age, I hated textbooks. But like the idea I think was right, but what I was trying to teach people was wrong, which is why Emberwind kind of took those lessons in stride, and now we're trying to teach people a little bit more about themselves, really, rather than about just how many times can a mosquito sting you in a week? Whoa, that type of stuff. Yeah.
So, do you have any particular influences in your creation of this game?
Oh yeah, definitely. Are you talking like other games or books or stuff, or are you talking
whatever influences went into making it? I would say for you.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. There are some huge influences in this from, and as soon as I say this, everyone will be able to see this, but there's some huge influences from MMOs that have bled into this. Yes, and one in particular probably needs a shout out, which is Guild Wars 1.
Okay.
I love that game for how it handled combining storytelling in an online multiplayer environment. There aren't very many games out there that do that, and there aren't that many MMOs that do. Actually, in fact, like Guild Wars doesn't quite qualify as an MMO. Like the original Guild Wars was actually categorized in a unique sector called co-RPGs, where it focused on cooperativeness,
Right.
which is interesting because it ended up becoming a huge like PvP esports thing later on. But I'm digressing. But yeah,
They all do.
well, the successful ones, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so Guild Wars 1 had a huge influence. And another large influence that came from that game, and another game that I'll name drop that that factored into this in a huge way was is Warframe. And that's that there is lateral based progression.
Right.
Yeah, Emberwind is built on a system where it starts you off with the bare bones structure, and as you get better at the game, both in the experience you gain in the game, but experience as a player, it will open and unlock new options for you, where the better you get, the more ways you can specialize and fulfill your role, rather than just get a little bit stronger, get more HP, and so forth. And the reason why we do that is because if everything goes up with their numbers, it just makes the arithmetic harder, and games or gameplay take longer because you're not being rewarded for what you're doing as a player anymore. It's just about chunking down this huge HP sponge that takes forever. Yeah. The kind of economy for how Emberwind is done, like it as a business model, is heavily inspired by Warframe as well, and how Digital Extremes has been handling the community, where they try and put in a lot of ethical business practices that support the gamer. So not only is this done in a way where we try and make the kind of base rules free, and what you're really paying for is the content that we create, we're trying to, and we've already started putting the legal work together for this, we're trying to basically turn our toolkit over for how you develop stuff to the public. And then if you guys are creating content, not only is that for free, you'll hopefully be able to get rewarded for it. I can't say anything more specific than rewarded right now, because we haven't been able to work out the best way of implementing that without pissing off investors. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Sounds interesting. So you're looking at user generated content.
Yes.
And how to bring that in with all possible legal issues you may encounter.
Yes.
In that respect.
And like I'm very careful in not using the language of having like an open game license the way that D&D and so forth does it, because this isn't.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. But this isn't an open game license system. Sorry. It's a game where like the base rules and so forth are given away to you openly, yes. But user generated content isn't just kind of tossed into the wild and left to kind of survive on its own. It's something that we're actually hoping to provide official support to, where not only does it get moved around on our own website and can be hosted there, it's kind of our distant hope right now to also try and get the best projects directly involved with their team, where we'll give you kind of writing support, art support, and so forth to polish it to the highest possible caliber that we can. And it's a way to hopefully enable creators of all different kinds, because we're not just looking at people who can create fun campaigns or new classes. This is also for like the artists out there who want to create cool artwork, and how to get them connected together into this huge network too.
That sounds like an interesting project. I hope it works out.
Yeah.
And
then finally, to kind of go back to the whole influences thing, because I do need to say this too. I've actually got a huge amount of influence from existential philosophy. So writers like Dostoevsky and Levinas, A lot of their particular principles bleed into how the game is conceptualized and is built out, the types of experiences you'll see while playing or experience while playing the game. But it's not as like clear cut as, oh, well, this system resembles this one from this game type thing. Yeah.
So what's something you wish you'd known about game design and making an indie game before you started? Before you embarked on this journey?
I wish I had known the amount of time that goes into this. Like, honestly, before I started working on this, I was like a very busy individual, both doing therapeutic practice and also a bunch of academic stuff. Like prior to this, I spent quite a bit of time over in Hong Kong, where I was working in a bunch of different psychiatric hospitals and so forth. Before moving to Seattle to do the same sort of, there I was working in addiction therapy and so forth. But yeah, and generally, like I've always lived a very busy life, but dear Lord, I have never been or felt as crunched for time as I have since starting Emberwind. A large part of that is because we're still like in a rampant growth phase where we're building out the team, adding more people to it. One of the things that we could desperately use right now is a project manager. But originally too, like I had some inklings that this would scale up in a way that was absolutely insane, and I had someone who was kind of working with me along through it all, but he unfortunately disappeared halfway through the project, so I've kind of had to take on twice the responsibilities, which is unfortunate. But yeah, if like you're looking for kind of good warning words for anyone listening, the way I'd phrase it is definitely work together with people who have a lot of passion and share in kind of a vision for your project. And the best place to locate those people are really kind of your friends that you start off this project with. But at the same time, once you add in kind of business and money to it all, it gets a little more complex. In our case, that wasn't what happened. There were some personal reasons why my friend ultimately backed out of the project. But yeah, as things scale up, responsibilities get tacked on super fast. Just be prepared for that. Yeah.
So what would you say is your favorite aspect of working on a project like Emberwind?
Hands down, it's got to be making something imaginary real. Yeah. There's nothing quite like taking something in your mind, or hell, not even in your mind. Sometimes like you won't be able to put it to words what you're trying to do. You'll just have this feeling. And having it kind of come together is just there's nothing that really describes it. Like the first time I handed kind of the scraps of the project to my art team. I was like, so this is the thing I'm thinking of making. What do you guys think? They're like, we don't play tabletop games. At least at that point, anyways. They've been corrupted since then. But they're like, we don't really know what you're doing. Are you looking for like D&D? I'm like, no, I'm looking for something kind of like it, but not. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. You can maybe do something. And we had nothing else to go on other than just that. So we went into what we call like an extended discovery phase where we just put like pencils on paper and just started sketching things out and playing around until we came up with this style. And we were like, oh man, this is cool. This visual style. We definitely want to do this. But like it didn't fit into the content. So we were like, okay, let's draft some actual written content. And we handed them kind of the first draft to the guys of Axia. And they started just drawing things based on just like a couple word descriptions about what this character might look like or the emotionality in the scene. And they're phenomenal artists, and you can probably tell that from the work. But just from those like loose descriptions alone, they were able to generate this type of artwork that like as soon as I saw it, and I think I'm going to forever remember this emotion when I first saw the artwork. I was just like, wow, this is it. Like, this is the actual world in front of me. I couldn't visualize what it looked like. I could just barely describe it, and now it exists. So
it's really beautiful, the artwork that I've seen.
Yeah, so shout out to all the artists on the project. You guys have been great.
So what is least favorite aspect of working on something like Emberwind?
Deadlines. No, I won't. Well, sort of. It's not quite just deadlines. It's deadlines plus community expectations. I'm definitely someone who wants to make sure that this game is the best it can be, and that refers to kind of the art form that is making games, to making something creative be the best experience it can be.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, we live in a world where even kind of the biggest and the best games out there rely on business practices because we all, for better or worse, need money to live. And those things are tied to the expectations. Like, this needs to be playable by this point. This has to be out by this date. And when you start factoring in all of those business practices, you end up with effectively like rushed projects where things aren't taken to the best that it can be. It's taken to a sufficient point before it has to be pushed out. And that is an unfortunate reality of everything, including Emberwind, which is why we try to circumvent that a little bit by letting people kind of get what they want when they want it, but also to make sure that we're improving the project whenever we can, giving kind of a rise to this lifetime system where not only do you get print copies, you also get PDF copies with things, and everything gets updated all the freaking time, regardless of whether you asked for it, just because we want to make sure that the game is in the best possible state it can be at all times. Balancing
go ahead. No, continue.
Okay. I was just going to say, those realities in themselves aren't that bad. It's balancing the two and making sure that members in the team don't hit a particular level of creative burnout. Because once you lose kind of the passion you have to make something as amazing as this right now, you're going to hit a kind of the bottom of that well, and you're never going to be able to find that energy again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So how do you personally cope with stress or obstacles that you encounter?
Well, I'd say just like determination and all, but that's not really doing it justice, and it's not really doing the people around me justice. I'm a firm believer that the other, which is like a very general term that's used in some of that philosophy I was talking about, but like really other people, that's where everything is at. There's no one in the world that needs to love you, that needs to take care of you, and so forth. And every moment that you can receive something like that from someone, it's this like blessing upon blessings. And as cheesy as that all sounds, it's true, right? Where like, let's say, your mother has passed away. There's literally nothing anyone can do in the entire universe that could bring your mother back. But having someone somewhere at the right moment say or not say the right thing and just simply commiserate with you makes you feel better. And they don't have to do that. They don't ever have to be there to do that. And we all know when it's not happening, and we can feel extremely lonely and sad when those things happen, and worst of all, alone. But we also definitely recognize when there are moments where people are supporting us. And for Emberwind, for me to be able to even get it to this state, it's the support that I've received not only from my team, my friends, my family, and all the people who I've met kind of along the way to this point, plus all the people I've yet to meet who have touched kind of my life, continue to support me through this whole journey. And also the other way around, where I'm really, really hoping that Emberwind will do something to help touch and support all these other different people's lives as well. That's actually why this isn't public yet, because Emberwind isn't in a state to be able to do this. But when the game, if it ever becomes something that's extremely successful and profitable, a large part of the motivation behind Emberwind was to support mental health. So a percentage of the profits are supposed to be put towards a nonprofit that we haven't figured out which one we're going to go with yet, or if we're going to just do it on our own. But basically a nonprofit organization that will fund and afford mental health to people who can't afford it. Because usually it's the people who can't afford it that need the most help.
That's commendable.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Do you ever get block?
Blocking.
You just like run out of ideas when you're.
I mean, we all do, which is why Emberwind is built in a way where that doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. The development cycle, the way that Emberwind is built, allows for anyone to build anything with it. Mm. In fact, some of the stories that we've written, some of the game data that we've created, it didn't start from me. It was just one of the artists having fun on the project where they're just like, hey, I drew this cool picture. If you can use it, go for it. That was it. And I took it to my writing team. Was like, hey, does anyone want to do something for this art piece? And like everyone sees like cool opportunities with it. There's lots of fun there, and it's almost like a in-house fight over who gets to work on it. But then they'll write like a fantastic story, and I'll be like, oh man, we can take this further and make this into actual gameplay. That's actually how the vignette that we put out, Sunlight and Sky, came to be. And Sunlight and Sky, kind of in this reverse way, end up getting tied into skies a little bit. So I'm spoiling something from the enhanced edition that people will find out in a little bit. But yeah, like it's basically done in a way where anyone anywhere can create whatever they want, and they can either create in a way that lets you plug it into the current world or do anything else with it. And vice versa, where you can start at any point with our material in the game and then depart off onto your own adventure too. And yeah, that's basically kind of the rule of thumb, where everything is all about trying to support creatives from any experience level in any way that they want to be creative, which is why I think Emberwind will be able to circumvent block very well.
That's good. So we've obviously talked about a lot, but do you have any more advice for people who want to start out in creating their own game?
Yeah, and it's probably something a lot of people realize but don't want to hear. Creating your own tabletop game, or really any game, is not an easy thing to get into if you want to do it as the business. A lot of people who are successful in this industry, relatively successful, let's say, this industry, they do so by doing it on the side of like a normal full-time job and so forth. It's extremely hard to do this full-time. And the reason for that, well, there's a lot of reasons, but basically sorry. There's a joke that summarizes it really well in kind of the tabletop industry, where what's the best way of making $1 million on your game? It's to start with 2 million, right? But yeah, like understand that if you're going to want to get people to turn heads, look at your game, it's going to require one of two things. Either you're going to need an extremely amazing game that you can also, and I can't recommend this enough, practice like a fantastic elevator pitch for your game to convince a publisher to pick it up, or you're going to need to have quite a bit of personal funding or private funding to be able to get something started. A lot of people turn to Kickstarter, but crowdfunding isn't just free money. It's actually very difficult. Keep that in mind too. Yeah.
You have a Kickstarter going right now, don't you?
Yes, I do, and I won't even pretend I know how that works. I've got a couple of members of my team who are absolutely phenomenal. I'll name drop, Peter at the very least, because he's fantastic, and he's in the middle of a lot of his own stuff and a move to the UK where he's been relocating. He's been running the Kickstarter, and yeah, like he's got a huge amount of experience with that type of stuff. And yes, our Kickstarter is live. You can see it at emberwindgame.com/Kickstarter. where we hit our funding goal in like the first 6 days, which is insane, and
That is great.
It doesn't look like the momentum's stopping either. So on our end, we're like equally thrilled about it, but equally panicking. We're like, oh God, how do we deliver all these things like we promised? There's a lot of work.
Now you have to do it. Yeah.
There's a lot of work that's been done. Like we'll get it all out. It's more so our manufacturers are making like really faces at us because we're making them do so much at the same time. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I mean, it's great that you got funded so quickly. So now you're on to stretch goals now?
Yeah, we've already hit our first stretch goal. We're closing in on our second one, which is very cool. The biggest stretch goals are set at kind of the 75 and the 150K right now, 75 being a brand new campaign series that we're launching, the first of which is titled Empire of Shattered Glass, which you can also read up on our website. And the 150 goal is actually a storyteller's guide or Bible, I guess, to the world of Axia. And this is very different creation that's both familiar yet unfamiliar to tabletop gamers, where it's basically like the closest thing or way to describe it is it's our analog to a DMG and a monster manual. You get all the facts that you need to know about the world of Axia, all the creatures that you'd like to see in Axia, in the same book, unless the page count exceeds like a certain amount and the binding doesn't work, then we'll have to figure out a way to split it up. But the really cool thing
part 2
is that we're not just giving
Volume 1, Volume 2.
The world as is.
Yeah.
Giving the world as it is right now that you've experienced it, and every version of the world that you can experience both in the past and the future. So you end up with a bunch of different ways to play where like the world of Axia actually becomes your way of playing many worlds at once. And yeah, like I can't hype that up any more than that, especially because there are other worlds we have on the side that we're looking to field at some point too. But right now it's all hands on deck to making sure that everyone at least has one sizable thing to bite into first.
That's awesome. So basically we're at the point where we say, how can people find out more about Nomnivore and about Emberwind?
Well, the easiest way is to visit our website, which is www.emberwindgame.com. And you can do kind of your basic reading there. But if you're looking to reach out about any larger or like more defined questions that you can't find answers to, we've got like a support thing there where every email gets dropped into my inbox, and I'm more than happy to chat with all of you. Or you can visit our forums or even our subreddit at /Emberwind to leave messages there. I'm also extremely active where I spend like at least 20 hours a day on our Kickstarter. So if you have any questions there, you can leave in the comments and I will be there to answer too. But otherwise, you can find us at conventions at any point in time. The next two that we'll be at will be PAX Unplugged in the States and Toronto Fan Days in Canada. And if you're just in Toronto and can't make any of those days, we also have open demos that you can just sit in and play as much of the Skies of Axia as you want, available at Spielhaus, which is a board game cafe in downtown Toronto.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, no,
thank you for talking to us. This has been Everyday Expertise. I'm Angela. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this interview. Be sure to share this video with friends and colleagues who may also enjoy this topic. Let us know your thoughts by leaving a comment below or check the description for our social media. See you next time.